Okay, this is the second video in factorising an expression, and in this video we're going to look at examples of how to take out a number as a factor when we factorise an expression. And I put taken out in inverted commas because it looks like you were taking a factor outside the bracket, which we'll see now in a minute. Okay, so let's have a look at an example. Get my pen. Okay, so example 1, if we were asked to factorise 4x plus 10, then we look at these two terms and we look to see if there is a factor of 4, and also that factor of 4 is a factor of 10. Now if you remember, we call that a common factor. Okay, it's a factor of 4 and a factor of 10. But not only do we want the common factor, or a common factor of 4 and 10, we want the highest common factor, which we call the HCF for short, if you remember. So we're looking for the highest common factor of 4 and 10. And then we're going to take that factor outside the bracket. Okay, so what's the highest whole number that divides into 4 and 10? Well, of course, it is 2. Okay, 2 goes into 4 and it goes into 10. 4 goes into 4, but it doesn't go into 10 because it leaves a remainder of 2. So 4 is not a factor of 10. Okay, you wouldn't bother with the number 1. Remember, 1 is a factor of everything, and well, you wouldn't do anything. If you put 1 outside the bracket, you'd have 4x plus 10 inside the bracket, so it wouldn't look any different really. So the highest factor of 4 and 10 is 2. So this is what we do. We put our pair of brackets underneath our expression. The sign in between the expression is always going to stay the same because the factors we take outside are always positive. You would never take out a negative factor at this level. Okay, all the factors you take out are positive. So when you multiply the bracket back out, obviously the signs stay the same. Signs only change when you multiply if the number you're multiplying by, if one of them is negative. Alright, so we put our highest common factor of our two numbers outside the bracket. Now we have to work out what goes inside the bracket in these two places. And the way I always do this is think of multiplying out, expanding my bracket to go back to my original expression. So I ask myself, 2 times what will give me 4x? Well, of course, 2 times 2x is 4x. Okay, 2 times 2x is 4x, that's okay. 2 times what will give me 10? 2 times 5 gives me 10. And that is the way I prefer to look at it. And that is factorised. That's done. That's all it is. What you could also do is divide your term by your factor that you've taken out. So 4 divided by 2 is 2, and 10 divided by 2 is 5. I just prefer to think of expanding my bracket and working out what goes inside by thinking of the multiplying rather than doing the division. But it's up to you. Okay, so that's it. Let's have a look at another example. Okay, factorise. That's always the key word. As soon as you see that, you should start thinking, right, I've got to put brackets back in. It's the opposite of expanding, multiplying the bracket, as I said in my first video. Factorise 8x minus 12. Okay, so what is the highest common factor of 8 and 12? If there is a factor at all. Well, there is. That's why I've given the example. So what's the highest number that goes into 8 and 12? And if you think about it, 4 is the highest common factor of 8 and 12. 4 goes into 8 and it goes into 12. That's the highest number that does. So, put a pair of brackets underneath, drop the sign in, leaving 2 gaps there, and we put our highest common factor outside. Now we work out what goes inside our brackets so that when we do multiply it, it would go back to the original expression. And that's, you should always check that anyway. Okay, So 4 times what will give me 8x. 4 2s are 8, so 4 times 2x is 8x. 4 times what will give me 12. 4 times 3 will give me 12. You don't have to worry about the signs, it's just 4 times 3 is 12. We've already dropped the sign in, so you don't need to worry about it. And that's it. Factorised. Done. Nice and easy. What if though? What if we did this? Okay. What if we looked for the highest common factor of 8 and 12 and you came up with 2? Okay. And instead of putting 4 outside, you put 2 outside. Let's put the sign inside. 2 times what gives me 8x? 4x. 2 times what gives me 12? 6. And we can check that again. 2 times 4x is 8x. 2 times 6 is 12. So everything looks lovely. Everything looks fine. It works out. I check my answer and I do get 8x minus 12 when I multiply what's inside this bracket by the 2 outside. So all seems okay. But what you should do is just check inside the bracket these two terms here and ask yourself, could I still factorise these two terms? Is there still a factor of the two numbers I've got here? Is there a number that goes into 4 and 6? Well, there is, isn't it? So we can still factorise this. We can still factorise this. So it's not finished, and we say this is not factorised completely. Yeah, right, it's not factorised completely. Now if you did that in an exam and this was 2 marks, you'd get 1 out of 2 because you factorised it. You haven't done something that's totally wrong. You have factorised it, but because you didn't take out the highest factor, you didn't take out 4, you took out 2, then you lose a mark for that. And we say it's not factorised completely. So when you are factorising an expression, you aim to take out the highest factor of the two numbers. Okay, just going to move this up. We're going to do a couple more examples. So I hope that makes sense. All right, and when we look at a few more examples, it'll hopefully you understand it even further. So here we go. Example 3. I'm not going to write the word factorise now because we know that's what we do in every single question. So this time we're going to look at minus 10a plus 15. So the reason I put this example, this time we've got a negative algebraic term at the front. Okay. In the other ones we had 8x and the other one was positive as well. So what happens now? Well, we put our brackets and we put our plus. You don't have to worry about this negative sign at all, right? Okay, ignore the minus sign in front of 10a. Okay, all you need to think of is what is the highest common factor of 10 and 15, and of course it is 5. 5 is the highest whole number that goes into 10 and 15. It divides into both those. So there's our factor. We only take out positive factors. So 5 times what will give me minus 10a? Well, it's going to be minus 2a. What I could have done, when I dropped the plus in there, I could have just dropped the minus in there as well, and then just thought of what's 5 times 2a is 10a. 5 times what is 10a, and put the 2a. So you don't need to worry about that. You just look at the 10 and 15 as if they are positive. Okay, and then 5 times what is 15? Of course, that is 3. We check inside the bracket. Can that still be factorised? No. The only thing that goes into 2 and 3 is 1, and you wouldn't bother with that. Okay, because 1's a factor of everything. Last example. Okay. Example 4. Factorise 12x plus 4y minus 8. So the only difference here, we got 3 terms instead of 2. And you could have as many terms as you like and be asked to factorise them. Makes it trickier because you've got more numbers to look at. So now we're looking for the highest common factor of 12, 4 and the 8. Remember, ignore the negative there, just look at the 8. What's the highest factor of 12, 4 and 8? Of course it is 4. 4 goes into 4, that's the highest factor of 4, but it also goes into 8 and it also goes into 12. Okay, and there's a strategy there. Look at the smallest number you have, find the highest factor for that and see if it is a factor of the other two. If it is a factor of the other two, well, that has to be the highest factor because nothing higher than 4 divides into the smallest number there, 4. Okay, right, so what do? Put our brackets, drop the signs in, put the plus there, put the minus there, then we've got 3 gaps, put our highest factor outside. 4 times what gives me 12x, 4 times 3x will give me 12x, 4 times what will give me 4y, well, that's just y, 4 times y is 4y, and 4 times what will give me 8, 4 times 2 will give me 8. And there we have our fourth example and that expression factorized. Okay, now that is it for this video, so I'm just going to recap very quickly. So this video solely looked at just taking out a number as a factor. So every factor we took out was just numbers. I mean, up to this point you've only been taught that factors are numbers, but as you'll see in the next video, factors can also be letters, and we'll be looking at taking out letters as a factor. Okay, and so there's the 4 examples. Remember, when you do factorize, always check the numbers inside your bracket to see if you can still factorize it. If you can, then it's not factorized completely and you haven't taken out the highest factor, so you need to look again. Alright, that is it for now. Okay, thank you very much.